source for everything paranormal. Paranormal.
Throughout the ages, history has been altered by word of mouth and the misrepresentation of those who might not have been present when some of the world's most significant events took place. Channelers Barry and Connie Strohm bring through the spirits of those who actually witnessed or took part in these historical events and lets them tell their stories in their own words. Welcome to Channeling History. And now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Channeling History. We're the only show where we speak to the souls that made things happen. We're brought to you every Sunday on the Parax Radio Network at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm Barry Strohm, your host, and I will be speaking the words of our spirit guests tonight.
And I'm Connie Strohm, your co-host. I'd like to thank you all of you that take the time to come and listen to our show. Please tell your friends about us so we can continue to grow our audience and our history lessons that we're putting out there. All of our shows are available for download on Podomatic.com and our YouTube channel, which is in Barry's name. In our last show, we channeled Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev. They discussed the ending of the Cold War and what is taking place currently in Russia. If you missed this show, it is well worth listening to.
Okay, tonight we're going to delve into American history and we're going to speak with John Adams. Adams played a huge role in the founding of our country. He assisted in the writing of the Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, was vice president under George Washington, and the second president of our country. His son, John Quincy Adams, became the sixth president of the United States. Now, we always give a disclaimer, so tonight's not going to be an exception. The opinions or statements voiced on our show are the channeled words of the spirits, do not necessarily reflect our opinions, those of the Parax Network, or those of our sponsors. Now, you also should know by now that before we channel, we say a prayer of protection. So Connie's going to say the prayer, and we will then begin to channel with the spirit of John Adams.
God, please grant us your wisdom and protection. Grant us the knowledge that we can handle and keep us safe from all things that will harm us. Keep the messages positive and pure love. Keep us safe from our egos. We ask these things in the light of the seen, the unseen, and the honesty of God. So, President Adams is here. Welcome, sir. We're very pleased that you could join us. Would you like to begin with a message?
Yes, I would. I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak here tonight. I know that it's been a long time since I've held public office, but when I lived, it was very troubled times. The British had made things unbearable for us. We knew that when we signed the Declaration of Independence, we were signing our death warrant. We knew that we had to fight with the most powerful country on earth, Great Britain. But we felt that individual freedom, the rights that God gave us, were much more important than all of the risks that we would be taking. I did my best. I know that there were many that did not approve of some of the things of which I believed in. But there were many brilliant people to help. I know Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Ben Franklin. There were many, many unique individuals that were sent back to assist in our forming of the government that most closely emulated the teachings of God. The United States then and the United States today is a very unique country. It is based on individual freedoms. Now, there are many out there today that are attempting to take away the freedoms that were given to you by God. If you allow that to happen, then the United States also will cease to exist. There are many countries out there that hate the United States. There are many countries that would love to see it go out of existence because the United States is the light that leads the world. If that light is extinguished, the world will descend into darkness. As your people, the residents of the country, elect individuals to run this highly complex country or government, they need to keep in mind that the individuals that are sent to Washington need to pursue the principles of those of us that were the founding fathers. So I know you have a lot of questions, and I know that we'll have some answers for you. So thank you. Thank you once again for allowing me to be here. And Connie, I know that you have many questions, so let us begin.
Okay, thank you. You were born in 1735. What was America like during your childhood?
We were British citizens. We conceived of ourselves as British citizens. We'd never known any other type of government. We felt that we had the same rights as a British citizen. As time progressed, the British took more advantage of the Americans. They started to tax us. They started to do things, and they did not give us the representation that we felt we should have. It was a very rural country. Even the cities were not what you would believe them to be. They were There were no paved streets. Even in the cities, there were individual homes. They were just simply grouped together. We relied on the farmers for the food. The the country had was much smaller at the time. The Native Americans controlled much of the area that was beyond where the farmers were. The the country was just so much different than what you would realize today. There was no running water, there were no toilets, there was very little government at the time. There were very few institutions where one could go to learn. It was it was a very young country. We valued our rights. We were very God fearing. And had we not had such a strong belief in in God, I doubt that we really could have put together a foundation that would have lasted, that has lasted for hundreds of years.
Yes, could you tell us about your parents?
I had very good parents. It was a time where we had large families. My parents did the best they could to educate me. They were participants in the beginnings of the political processes of local government. My father wanted me to become educated. He thought that perhaps I would become a member of the clergy, but I knew that I had ambitions, and I realized that the best way to do it was to become an attorney. Attorneys were much different in those days. There were very few places that you could learn the law. And the law that we were learning was based basically on British common law. Keep in mind that as I was growing up, there was no American judicial system. Everything everything was as the British would have it.
In 1764, you married Abigail. Will you tell us about her, please?
I thought that she was one of the most beautiful women that ever lived. I fell in love with her. Her family wasn't too enamored with me at the time, but we persevered. She was a great conversationalist. She was educated. She understood what was taking place around us. And she was the absolute love of my life.
Could you tell us about the Stamp Act of 1765?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the British were trying to take advantage of the colonists. They required that legal documents would bear a stamp, and the stamp was a type of taxation. We really we had no say in how the British would levy taxes upon us. It was an early step towards intimidation. The British were fighting wars in Europe, and they needed funding to continue the military and naval actions. Great Britain had a huge naval fleet. It was they basically used it to exert their power on other countries. The Stamp Act was basically a foundation of acts that would lead to us demanding separation from the mother country.
In 1770, American colonists began a riot that resulted in British soldiers firing and killing 5 colonists. This incident is referred to as the Boston Massacre. You were no fan of the British, but defended the soldiers in that court. Would you tell us about the incident and the trial?
It was it was a very, very strange situation. The colonists actually started a small riot. There were a couple British soldiers there that were protecting one of the buildings. The colonists became more and more violent in their actions. The soldiers asked for more help. More soldiers arrived. There was a misunderstanding, and to this day, we don't totally realize what took place. But one of the soldiers panicked. He swore that he heard his officer yell fire. We think that it was actually one of the colonists that did it, but they started to fire upon the citizens, actually killing 5 of them, wounding several more. I felt that the soldiers deserved a fair trial. I I realized that both sides were not exactly telling the truth of what took place. I felt that the soldiers were actually victims of circumstances beyond their control, and they did not deserve to be fully penalized from what had taken place. I felt that the colonists were actually responsible for it. I felt that a fair trial was something that every individual had a right to. So I defended the soldiers. I had several of them acquitted. A couple of them had minor decisions against them. I had a lot of criticism from many of my friends and family about doing it, but I felt that all individuals should have the same rights. And I felt that a fair trial was part of those rights, and I defended that.
How did your actions in this trial affect your legal and political career?
Well, for a while, everybody was very, very upset with me. They felt that I was a traitor. But as time went on, they realized that I was truly an American patriot. They realized that what I was doing was bringing justice. I think most of them realized that if the individual justice rights were not defended, that it would affect that it would affect everybody. So after a year or so, things calmed down. I had become more and more active in anti-British publications and writings. And it took a little bit, but yeah, for a while, my I was not exactly the most popular person.
Okay, you didn't always believe that the colonies should separate from Britain. And obviously, this started to change your mind. Was there anything else involved that changed your mind about that?
Yes, they continued to do things that did not give us any say in what was taking place. Their taxation policies became more and more excessive. They were taking away our individual rights. They were having search and seizure without any warrant. They were not treating us as British citizens. It was it was simply that they were doing more and more to oppose the rights of American colonists. We were far from being treated as equal British citizens, which is what I consider ourselves to be in the beginning. It was their actions that predicated all of the militancy on the part of the colonials. I I reached a point that I fully understood that we had to separate from Great Britain if we were going to maintain any of our rights.
What role did you play in the writing of the Declaration of Independence?
Thomas played the largest part in writing it. I would make suggestions, and I would try to we would discuss things. The Declaration was a unique document. It was the document that laid out our individual rights, and it laid the foundation for what would become our Constitution and Bill of Rights. I mostly acted as an advisor. Thomas was an extremely brilliant person, and I helped generate some changes in the document that would make it more acceptable. Keep in mind that we had large differences, and it was a time of slavery in our country. We could have never achieved independence without the support of the southern states. And if we would have taken a strong standing against slavery, we would have alienated the states and we would have never had a country. So the Declaration of Independence kind of walked a tightrope, but when it was finished, I think it was a document that nobody truly liked all parts of, but it was a great compromise and it truly laid the foundation of what was to come.
What role did you play during the Revolutionary War?
I mostly played a diplomatic role. We realized from the start that we needed to try to get France involved on our side. I spent much of the time traveling in France, trying to build up support. I would come back home once in a while, but mostly the role, I guess, that I played an administrative role in trying to set up different types of regulations. I tried to help with ideas on how to finance the war. Keep in mind that was not a time of general taxation, and militaries had to be paid, weapons had to be purchased. We were starting out from zero. Our government, we had no government when we began. So there was so much to do. But one of the most important things was attempting to get France to come into the war on our side.
Yeah. Okay. You did serve as the head of the Board of War, and you were responsible for raising and equipping the American Army and creating the Navy. How would you rate your success in this role?
I think we did a pretty good job. After all, we won the war. And it was, as I said, it was just simply a time where we had to build our own foundation for everything that we did. I don't think modern generations understand the history of revolutionary times. It is not taught as it should be in the schools. I don't think that the younger generations have a true appreciation for what we did and what we accomplished.
You are correct about that. I'm 100% behind you. Why did you not serve in the military?
I had offered to serve in the military, but the others in the government felt that I would be much more advantageous in using my talents towards setting up administrative groups. We had we had many subcommittees. We had many things that we had to figure out how to accomplish. And I was not truly trained in the military, but I was trained as an attorney. I would have served, but I truly felt that my abilities would better serve the country in the fashion of the roles that I accomplished.
And that is correct. You spent time as a diplomat with Ben Franklin. What was your opinion of Franklin?
Franklin was brilliant, and he was also crazy. Franklin was a very unique individual, highly intelligent, very good at diplomacy, but I'm only going to say that he was a very unique individual. I still see him over here, and we're extremely good friends. So I promised him I wouldn't say anything that would incriminate him of anything during this show.
Okay, we respect that, sir. How would you describe your temperament in dealing with the British as you helped negotiate the Treaty of Paris that ended the Revolutionary War?
I was considered to be a bit bullheaded. I felt that many of my ideas were the only way to go. And because of it, I would be very firm in certain things that I was insisting on. Probably overly so. Many people thought I was arrogant, but I was very insistent. I think I would just consider myself uh, very insistent.
Okay, we'll go with that. You were a member of the Federalist Party. Will you tell us what the Federalist Party stood for?
I felt that it was imperative that we had a strong central government. I thought that the central government had to form a basis to raise funding. It should provide a strong military. It should have a very strong navy to protect the trade routes. Federalism at that time was in opposition to many of the individuals that came from the South, many of the people that had plantations. Uh, Keep in mind, America was an incredibly rural country in this time. Many people fully resented the fact that we would be giving strength to the cities. The whole act of setting up the government came down to trying to find some basis for equality. The rural states did not want to have a different standing than the populated states. Today, you're seeing much of the same problems that we faced. The cities basically have one type of government now, and rural areas have another type of government or type of interest. Rural areas are decreasing in size. So it is going to be a big problem for you in the future how you can defend the rights of those that live in a much smaller area against the huge populations of the cities that you have today. We did not have the huge cities that you face in modern America, but the cities were growing. They were centers of commerce. They were areas where people were going to get jobs that did not want to work. Many of them didn't want to face the dangers of the frontier, so they would move to cities. I felt that it was only through a strong central government that you could enforce taxation and policies that would assure longevity in the government.
How was the vice president elected during these early elections?
The vice president was the person that received the second amount of votes. Keep in mind that there was so much that was not defined in these days. So you could actually have individuals from different parties. One would be elected president, have the most electoral votes, and this person that had the second amount would be vice president. But it was also very possible for the president to isolate the vice president because, as I say, these were formative years, and the duties of the different offices were clearly not defined.
Yeah. Okay, during the 8 years that George Washington served as president, you were his vice president. What was it like being vice president under George Washington?
George was an incredible individual. He tried to keep everybody as happy as possible. He wanted compromise. Keep in mind that Washington never proclaimed that he was a member of any political party. He actually felt that the existence of political parties would be counterproductive to governments accomplishing anything because it would basically set up battle lines that would take place in government. As you can see today, he was quite correct. He was an incredible individual. I, while I did not have much authority under him, and he didn't really discuss that much with me, it was a very, very interesting situation.
Yeah. What exactly was the role of vice president during these early presidencies?
Whatever the president wanted it to be. And in my case, under Washington, he wanted to make the majority of the decisions. As a military leader, that is required. He did keep us out of wars. He did many things. He laid a great foundation for the country. So the last thing I would ever do has criticized the decisions that were made by President Washington. Okay, let's take a small break here. We'll be back in about 3 minutes.
Go away. Channeling History will return right after these brief messages.
In order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness must be present. Tune in every Monday at 10 o'clock for Dark Sun Rising on the Para-X Radio Network.
Hi, this is Marla Brooks from Stirring the Cauldron. Thursdays are a great night on the Para-X Radio Network. We start off the evening with Journey into the Light, Chapter 3, with your hosts, Psychic Little T and Tabby Cat Gash at 7 p.m. Eastern. Then, on the first and third Thursdays of the month at 8 p.m., it's Tango and Friends, hosted by Bruce Tango. And on the alternate Thursdays at 8 p.m., tune in to Stirring the Cauldron, the Archive podcast. Every week at 9 p.m. Eastern, join me on Stirring the Cauldron Live. And then at 10 p.m., stick around for New Aeon Now with Lily Alley, Davron Michaels, and Christine Matza. Finally, to round out the night, join Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz on the Paranormal Encounters podcast. All this every Thursday, right here on Para-X.
Have you ever wondered what Jesus and his followers would say if you could receive their messages today? In his new book, Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits, channeler and author Barry Strohm answers those questions for you. Using his gift of spirit communication, he brings you messages from such Holy Spirits as Moses, John the Baptist, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, Jesus, and even Mother Teresa and the Reverend Billy Graham. They discuss topics that are important for contemporary life in these troubled times. Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other booksellers. Signed copies are available on the author's website, spiritspredict.com. After reading this book, you will never again say, "What would Jesus say or do?" Welcome back to Channeling History. Now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Connie, let's have some more questions.
Okay, as you said, George Washington did not believe in political parties, and he had good reasons for that. Why do you think political parties ended up coming into existence anyway?
It was inevitable that there would be some great differences of opinion. The longer that our government existed, the more differences came out. The agrarian part of our economy was trying to maintain their power. They felt that they were carrying more in taxations. They strongly disagreed that strong federal government was the way to go. I guess it was inevitable. I know that I probably contributed to it. And yes, the problem with political parties today has become so outrageous. We never, ever conceived that things could be as bad as they are. I mean, we had major disagreements. We had major arguments and debates. But we also realized that we had to compromise. Today, political parties don't seem to understand that.
No, they don't. All in all, what was your opinion of Washington's presidency?
I think it was a great presidency. I think it laid the foundation of what was to come. I don't think there was anybody that could have done any more for the country at that time. He was totally respected by everyone. He was unanimously elected to be president. And I have very little criticism of what he did.
You were the only person to ever serve as president as a member of the Federalist Party. Why did you feel a party affiliation was necessary at that time?
I felt that a party affiliation was becoming necessary in order to generate enough votes to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish. I never realized what the final result would be and what we're seeing today. But I did feel that people of common political beliefs should join together in order to attempt to come up with a government that would serve the people better.
Yeah. What caused the weakening of the Federalist Party?
The 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 fact that we were such an agrarian society, the fact that we're trying to advance the frontier to add more rural states, the farmers living on the frontier did not feel that they should be taxed as heavily as the individuals living in the cities. It's very understandable that the political parties would form, that political parties would change. Slavery basically created the Republican Party. There were such differences between different areas of the country, different types of beliefs. The plantation owners had much different ideas than the industrialists that lived in the North. It was America in those times had many extremes. Individuals in the cities were much different from those living on the frontier.
Yeah. Okay, what is your general opinion of our current federal government?
As we watch from over here, we cannot believe what has happened to the federal government. I was in favor of a strong federal government. As I look at it today, it has grown beyond any proportions, and it has grown so large that no one has the ability to control it. The vast sums of money that are collected in tax dollars, the current thought that there will basically be no limit to your national debt. That will undermine the country for future generations. Debt has to be paid back. Modern government is so different from the government that we conceived of. I'm not sure how the people can ever fully gain control of the government that is currently in place. Both parties are so abusive of the people. The growth of social programs. Now, I do agree that there should be safety nets, but the growth of these programs are making people so dependent upon the government. The wealth is being accumulated in so few hands now. Those people are not paying the taxes that they should be paying. There are so many problems that the government has to face today. The complexities, the fact of other countries showing such hatred, the growth of other economies. It is an incredibly complex time. I truly hope that the people will be able to elect representatives that understand what is taking place around them. If compromise, it does not become one of the foremost goals of your current government, I fear that there is a great possibility of failure in the future.
Yes. What influence did the French Revolution play on the American government during the 1790s?
The intervention of the French at Yorktown was the key to us winning the Revolutionary War. So there were many people that felt that we should become involved with France. The revolution in France, many people thought was similar to that of the American Revolution. I felt that it was that we needed to remain neutral, that we could not have ourselves drawn into European problems. Great Britain was still a major factor in the world. I did not want to alienate them, but the French Revolution did cause fractures in our own government.
When you were elected president in 1796, Thomas Jefferson became your vice president. How did that work out for you?
Thomas and I had been very, very good friends. We became political opponents. We both said many things we should not have said. And I believed in a strong federal government. Thomas believed in preserving states' rights. So we both had many, many disagreements. I did not play a large role in Thomas's government. We actually became quite bitter enemies. We did patch that back up later in life, but I did not play a very active role in his presidency.
When you took the presidency, France and Britain were at war. How did that affect your presidency?
I felt that we needed to remain neutral, that we needed to not become involved in European wars. I sent individuals to negotiate with France. They were rebuffed. That caused a lot of animosity towards France over here in our country. I think one of my greatest accomplishments was not getting involved, was keeping our country out of involvement.
Okay. Do you consider keeping the United States out of a war with? Did you consider keeping the United States out of a war with France was your major accomplishment then?
Yes, I considered the fact that we did not get involved in that war, which could have destroyed our country, one of my major accomplishments.
Yes. How did you and Alexander Hamilton, both Federalists, get along?
We had a lot of disagreements. Alexander was a very strong personality, as was I. We tried to work together as best we could. I did support many of the things that he wanted to do financially for the government. It's probably our disagreements that wound up in splitting the Federalist Party. But I do see him over here We are very good friends. You find out that when you get on this side, that many of the things that you disagreed on really weren't that important.
Okay. What was your opinion on slavery and how did that affect your presidency?
I knew slavery was wrong. I knew that all men really, truly were created equal. I had to be very, very careful because, as I spoke earlier, many of the Southern politicians would not hear anything in any opposing arguments to slavery. We also relied very heavily on the cotton exports. Slavery slavery was a very difficult situation. It was something that I truly opposed, but I just felt that I did not want to split the country over it.
Okay. What role did your wife Abigail play in your presidency?
She was an incredible advisor. She was my rock. When I wanted advice, I would speak to her about it. She was an intellectual. She understood many things. She understood that women's rights was something that should be heavily addressed. Keep in mind that that was a time that women were not considered as well educated. They didn't have educational opportunities. They were not given the right to vote. It was a very difficult time for women, especially intellectual women such as my wife. But she played a very, very important role in giving me a person to whom I could discuss things. And she presented many things to me that I could not really accomplish for her.
Yeah. Abigail wrote in a letter to you that remember all men would be tyrants if they could. What did she mean by that statement?
She felt that men would, well, in those days, all government was run by men. She realized that there was really no place in government at the time, that women were being totally controlled by men. She felt that women deserved equality, that they deserved a right to equal education, and that they could be very effective in government if they were given a chance. She thought that men were basically tyrants. And in many ways, in those days, she was correct.
Mhm. Okay, in 1798, you created the Department of the Navy. Why did you feel this was so important?
The French were raiding our merchant ships. They were trying to force us into becoming involved in their war. I realized that we had to defend our trade routes. So I felt that a large navy was absolutely imperative if we were going to maintain our abilities to trade abroad. And international trade was critical because we needed to bring in the revenues from it. Cotton had to be traded around the world. Great Britain bought a lot of our cotton, as did France. I felt that there was absolutely no way that we could control our destiny without a strong navy.
Yeah. What do you consider your main legacy?
The fact that I tried to preserve the Union, the fact that I kept us out of war, the fact that I helped negotiate with France to bring them into the war, the fact that we would have never been able to win the Revolutionary War without their assistance.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel that I did many, many things that assured that the United States would remain viable.
Yeah. John Marshall was your Secretary of State. Just before you vacated the office of president, you named him Chief Justice, and Marshall played a significant role in the development of the American legal system. What is your opinion of the role of John Marshall?
John was an incredible intellectual. He understood the judicial system of the British. He understood what we were trying to accomplish with the judicial system in America. He served for many, many years. He forced, I should not say forced, he negotiated the justices of the Supreme Court to act as a truly independent body. He did much to assure the equality of our legal system. I cannot say too much about him. He was wonderful.
What is your opinion of the current Supreme Court?
I think the current Supreme Court, the justices are attempting to judge legislation or cases to the best of their abilities. I think that some of the justices are attempting to make their own translations about how the Constitution should be interpreted. Some of the justices remain true to the Constitution. I think they provide a good balance of opinion. I think that the integrity of the justices is impeccable. I think that they're at times reacting to political influences. I think that is wrong. We gave them lifetime appointments so that they could remain neutral and that they could truly offset the other two legislative, the legislative and executive body. I would hope that the politicians stop attempting to influence the Supreme Court and allow them to act with the neutrality that we tried to give to them.
Okay, what do you believe is the greatest danger to the long-term survival of the United States?
I think that the country can maintain a military sufficient to provide deterrence and protection. But what I think is the most dangerous thing is the long-term debt. We never ever conceived of a debt relationship to income such as you have today. Debt has to be paid back, especially since your interest rates are allowed to fluctuate. In times of inflation, interest rates will rise, your debt will rise. If the politicians do not decide that they are going to attempt to stabilize the national debt and to pay it back, there will be a time that you will not be able to meet your obligations. Just as an individual, if he borrows too much money and falls into hard times, cannot pay his obligations, the government will be the same. I think that the terrible size of the debt is the greatest threat to the future of your country.
Yes. This has been a wonderful interview, Mr. President. I'm so glad that you agreed to come. Do you have a final message for us?
Yes, I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak. I tried to give you a little information regarding how the country was founded, what some of the things were that we believed, and how we compromised to bring about a foundation that has lasted for these hundreds of years. I hope that each of you understand that you have to fight to protect your own rights that God has given you. Your electoral system gives you the ability to fight for those rights. If you do not use those rights wisely, if you do not understand what's going on around you, if you do not learn how to separate truth from fiction, then you will give up those rights. And once a right is abandoned, you'll never get it back. I want you to remember that. The most important thing that you can do in your lives are to fight for the rights that God has given you. If you fail to do that, they will go away. All great civilizations have failed in the past. We gave you a foundation of government that you can build upon that will assure that the United States lasts long into the future. If you do not respect those foundations that we laid for you, then you will lose those rights and your government will fail. So I want to thank you for allowing me to come through. I hope that I didn't bore you. We lived in much different times, but we laid a foundation that lasted. If you fight to maintain the rights that God gave you, there will be a United States far into the future. If not, then your people will probably be speaking a different language. So goodbye. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And if should you ever wish to hear from me again, I would be happy to return.
Thank you so much, sir. You were not the least bit boring.
Okay, thank you so much. Next week, we're going to interview the spirit of the Roman Emperor Augustus. He served Rome as emperor for 41 years, changed the Roman society from a republic to an empire, did many, many things. It's going to be a very interesting spirit to speak to. You can submit questions and suggestions for future guests through our email, channelinghistoryonparax@gmail.com. My 8th book, Messages of Modern Messages of God for a Modern World, is now available on Amazon. Contains 60 channeled messages of Jesus that we've done in our different podcasts. They're incredible messages. I suggest you check them out. We have them up for sale for reduced price right now, but that's going to soon change. The book is also available on Kindle, so you can download it. It's available in many foreign countries. So I hope you take time to check it out. All our shows are available on our YouTube channel. It's in my name, Barry Strohm. If you want to download them, you can go to podomatic.com and search Channeling History. I hope that you enjoyed our show. I know that we haven't been on for several weeks. I've had a few physical problems. Hopefully they're straightened out. Next week, I hope we can come back live, and I hope we can come back with the chat room because we always enjoy taking questions, and we certainly appreciate your support. So thank you for listening. Please join us Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the Parax Radio Network.
And I would also like to thank you for joining us. I hope you all have a wonderful week. God bless every one of you.
Listening to Channeling History. Tune in again next week for another electrifying episode, as we never know who will make an appearance or who will come through the portal. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2020. Our Story Begins by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.